Hey, this is Gator McAlister, and you're listening to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
This is Steve BOWTIE Bryant here. Back in the 90s, I was a pro wrestling photographer for the South, and I released what might have been one of the original sets of indie trading cards. I ran across some of these original sets. They were up in Randall Fanning's attic all this time. PG-13 rookie card. Ricky Morton, George Weingroff as the Sheik, Chris Champion, Reno Riggins, Billy Montana, Gary Valiant, the Scorpion, the Medic, Rick Reynolds, Jeff Daniels, Mephisto and Dante, Ben Jordan, Steve Neely, Marcus Woodrow, Clinton Charisma, Little Farmer John. If you'd like an opportunity to get these cards, contact me now. You can get them for only $49.99. Contact me at stevebowtiebryant at iCloud.com. Get your set now while supplies last.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And as always, I'm here with my brother from the same father and mother, the Plastic Sheik, Jared Street. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Not much, man. Just living life and working and doing this, man. Just love doing this with you.
Yeah. Are you in a repeat cycle sometimes like me, like I feel?
Dude, sometimes I feel like life just is like so crammed full of things. I don't know what to, I don't know if I have any time sometimes for myself.
Yeah. Like, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we cram so much stuff in our lives?
But then if I didn't, I would just be lazy or something. So, I mean,
I know. Probably some of it's to do with the kids and other parts of it's just to do with work and things like that. Yeah, makes sense.
It's summertime, so you're going here, going there, stuff like that. So
yeah, that's about it, man. That's about it. So anyway, to kind of go in a totally different direction now, we do have a cool guest today, as y'all saw on the promotional posts on our social media platforms, that we have the man, Gator McAlister here. And I just can't wait to hear. I mean, I've been researching his stuff, and honestly, brother's done a lot. I think we're gonna have a fun time with him. I really do.
Yeah, man, he's got a great name too, Gator McAlister. I mean, like, I hope we get into more of some of the origins of that name and kind of learn some of that, and ask him about that and see how that came about. But that's an awesome name. That's you don't, sometimes you get some bland names, but you got something like that. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you got names like Hot Rod Biggs. I love that name. Gator McAlister. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of these guys have some great names, but when it comes down to it, Gator might be one of the best. Absolutely. That it's funny. He's such a good dude, though. That's what's crazy is I just remember every time, he kind of looks like, like he would be gruff or have like a gruff demeanor. But honestly, when you talk to him, he just like smiles and laughs and just has a good time. It's just his exterior. He's actually a really funny, nice guy on the inside. So anyway, Gator's going to be awesome. I can't wait to have him on. I can't wait to talk all about his career. Lots of cool stuff, man. Like, seriously, part of my love of doing what we do is the research on these guys and actually hearing the full story with these dudes, because man, sometimes you uncover like pearls, or gems.
Yeah. There's always something we find out from these guys that, we didn't know. I think it was Quentin was one. He's like, "Do y'all want to know the full truth?" We're like, "Yeah, we don't want to know the full truth."
Yeah. We want to hear it.
Yeah,
plain honest. Yeah.
So we always seem to dig up a pearl somehow, and it's not even it's not even like kind of like we're even trying for them. They just happen though. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. Speaking of past guest episodes, I like the segue
there.
Yeah, it's nice. So first off, we had Doug Markham. Man, Doug's awesome. He's already passed so many people. If I'm not mistaken, he's like 7th or 8th in the rankings now. So. Wow. Yeah, man. I mean, I knew a lot of the listeners would listen to him. Of course, our normal listeners would listen, but I do believe he pulled in some other people, and that's very appreciative. Thank you, Doug. I know you're listening, brother. Super appreciative of that. Your show's doing great. We're proud to have you on, and really, it means a lot.
Yeah, man. It was great when I enjoyed so much talking to Doug, and I was just going to give him a shout out, man. You see him on Facebook. He's sharing our stuff. He shares, and he supports small businesses a lot. That's awesome. I see on his Facebook, he is always sharing stuff like that. So that's always killer to me when somebody's doing that, because it shows that they're a down home type of guy. And they like to help the little guy, and that's always important. But man, yeah, he's such a good guest, and he had so many good stories, and it was great to hear it. And man, I'm loving the Plunky and Kroll episode, the special episode you had. I hate I couldn't be in on that, but it kind of worked out with timing that I couldn't be in, and it kind of made more sense for it to just be one interviewer instead of two, with them telling the story and everything like that. But
yeah, I mean, Kroll doesn't need any other people talking, but no, Kroll had such a story to let out, and I appreciate that you enjoyed that one. Kroll had such a story to say. I mean, it really felt like Plunky and I were interviewing Kroll in a way, it was, but it was funny because I wanted to hear Plunky's perspective. One of my favorite parts was going back and listening to the Tracy Smothers excerpts when he was talking to Plunky about, hey man, you got to get ready. These guys will eat you alive if you let them, just added such a layer of reality to it that honestly, I think put it over the edge for me. Of course, I'm friends with Plunky, was friends with him at the time. I was pulling for him. I remember it so vividly now how much it was so important and really seemed like a really big thing was happening. And so, it was cool to see that and relive that. Then to hear all the grimy details from what happened and what went on from Kroll kind of finalize the story a bit. It's just, to me, man, I don't know. Yeah. I'm glad that it happened, but it seemed like it took almost more than it was worth in a sense, but that's the beauty of it, is I think when Kroll believes in something, Kroll will fight for it. And that's proof right there. That's proof that he will absolutely fight for it. And yeah, man, I do know right now Kroll's in a bit of a battle for the rights to his building in the Troubadour. He's got that Coastal Championship Wrestling, which is a Florida-based promotion that's coming up to Nashville, and they had a venue and it fell through, and I think they're going to be August 18th, and they're doing a Friday night. Coastal Championship Wrestling booked the same building the 19th, so it's literally 2 nights of wrestling, and they're not related. It just seems kind of dastardly. So he's got another fight on his hands. Maybe that'll be a future episode to hear the full story on that one. But yeah. I don't know, but I'm glad you enjoyed that. I've got some other ideas that we can do in the future that are going to be fun. I've been talking to some of the guys about possibilities on what we can do with that, those types of episodes in the future. So if y'all enjoyed that, let us know in the comments, let us know on the socials. But I think right now, we need to get old Gator McAlister on here. What do you say?
Let's get him, man. I can't wait.
All right, we'll be right back after these messages with more from Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
That's right, it's the talk of Middle Tennessee, the channel you love to hate and the channel you hate to love. It's Brian Turner from Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. And if you're looking for matches from Wolfie D to Jerry Lawler to Dusty Rhodes and the team that put a pimp before your eyes and a goatee between your thighs, Booty Call and Athena, go to lostwrestling.com. See, I made it easy for you. Brian Turner's VHS Rehab. Booyah.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Join me, Gene Jackson, for the Jackson Interaction Podcast, where I'll be doing one-on-one interviews with people from the world of professional wrestling, as well as stand-up comedy. You can get them anywhere podcasts are available in both video and audio form, but you can find them all at GeneJacksonPod.com.
All right, we are back with more from the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And as promised, Jared, who do we have today? With my old buddy, Gator McAlister. Now, Gator is one of these guys that I guarantee you've seen him. He's done everything. He's had an amazing career, and I'm excited to talk to him. But as always, on every episode, we go to my brother, the Plastic Sheik, for the very first question of the show. Go ahead, Sheik.
All right, Gator. So this is a question that I like to get out of the way. It'll let everybody know kind of your influences in wrestling and just your fandom in wrestling. If you could list your top, your Mount Rushmore, your top 4 or 5 wrestlers all time that you're, in your opinion, what would that be?
That one's a little hard, honestly. I mean, where I grew up on Memphis wrestling. I hadn't even seen or heard of WWF until I was probably 12 years old. So I grew up on Memphis, and I grew up on the old NWA.
Yeah.
So my Mount Rushmore, my top 4 would be Austin Idol.
Yeah.
I was a huge Austin Idol fan. Dutch Mantell.
Of course.
Jerry Lawler. And Ric Flair. That's, Ric Flair and honorable mention to Dusty Rhodes, because those guys hate the business, They paved the way for so many wrestlers.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. It's a great list. I mean, nobody can argue with anything there. I mean,
no, absolutely.
You got when you can tell your influences, though, your area influences, and that's fine. That's why we like to get these questions out there and get it answered with, hey, this is what I was influenced by. This is what I like to see. This is, and some people, if we were talking to somebody in the Northeast, they would be like, okay, well, Bruno Sammartino, this right here.
Yeah, and Matt Bourne and some of those guys.
Or
be Matt Bourne and Adrian Adonis. Those are big Portland guys,
Yeah, maybe Lynn Denton or somebody like that. And But Gator McAlister, brother, how long has it been since we've seen each other? I bet it's been 10 years. What are you up to these days, brother?
Actually, I retired from wrestling and got my CDL and went on the road as a big rig truck driver.
Yeah, dude. I thought I saw that. And now I think you've done that to take advantage of one thing, right? Is you get to go to all these awesome conventions, right?
Absolutely. I spend a lot of my free time going to like comic book conventions and horror conventions and stuff like that. I'm a big nerd, and
we all are.
After spending so many years on the road wrestling, the truck driving's just natural because I'm on the road, So it all kind of flows together.
Dude, you're just born to be a trucker because you're a wrestler. Rick Reynolds does some of that too. I mean, everybody's riding. I love it. So yeah, that makes total sense. Well, I tell you what. So we kind of talked about where you are now and stuff. Let's go all the way back here. So this is, we get the Mount Rushmore, then we talk a little bit about what you're doing now, but then we go all the way back to the very beginning, to the days when you were just a little bitty Gator. Okay, so in your younger days, where were you born, man? Where were you born? Where'd you go to high school?
I was actually born in a little small town just outside of Evansville, Indiana, called Linville.
Okay.
Was born there, and literally the next day was in Madisonville, Kentucky. So that's where I grew up. Spent the majority of my life in that town and the little surrounding towns around it. Went to Madisonville North Hopkins High School, which had like the state football champions at one time and all that. Got kicked out of public school. And graduated from a private Christian school of all places for me.
Yeah.
So
lines up.
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, but I grew up watching wrestling on TV, and I went to my very first wrestling show when I was 5 years old.
Man.
And it was at the local middle school there in Madisonville, and the main event was Joe LeDuc against Jerry Lawler.
Boom. Okay, that tells me the time frame then. Okay.
Yeah. And of course, course, Joe LeDuc was doing the gimmick back then where he would tie the straps around his arms, pick 10 guys out of the crowd, and have them try to separate his arms, and nobody ever could, you know.
Right.
But I knew that night that is what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to become a professional wrestler. I didn't care how. I didn't care where. I just knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you say like Joe LeDuc was a bit of an influence, or was it more Jerry Lawler?
It was more Lawler.
Yeah.
I mean, LeDuc was great.
Because I can see some of him in your latter days. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, go ahead.
And I've gotten that from people. It was more Lawler, just the way that the crowd gravitated toward him. Of course, at the time, he was the big Memphis babyface, you know.
Oh,
so,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
Everybody, you know, in the, like, just like Ricky Morton, you know, the way Lawler sold and his facial expressions and everything, I believed every single move and every single thing that happened that night. Mm-hmm. And it hit me in like a ton of bricks. And I was like, this is what I'm going to grow up to be one day. And, you know, and I never went away from that. You know,
yeah.
I still vividly remember the match.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's been 100 years ago.
100, maybe at least 100. Yeah, maybe 101. But Jerry Lawler was magic, and that he had that crowd in the palm of his hand every time he went out there, and he's still magic. You know, I definitely consider him one of the greatest of all time, and nobody can argue that with me. You know, I'm an adoptee of Memphis. I grew up the Mid-Atlantic, you know, but honestly, I've loved Memphis as soon as I started watching it. It's just a different kind of vibe. Okay, so you're growing up and you're loving wrestling. Now, who was your influence on liking wrestling? Who let you go watch wrestling?
My great-grandmother and my great-uncle. They were brother and sister. They lived together, took care of each other. Huge wrestling fans.
Okay.
So, you know, my mom was a big Michael Hayes fan.
Oh,
and if it wasn't Michael Hayes, we weren't allowed to watch it. But, you know, Saturday mornings I was on my bicycle riding all the way across town to my grandmother and uncle's house, and I'd sit with them. And of course, it was the old school. You didn't stand up and get in front of the TV. You get a cane upside your head, stuff like that. You know?
Yep, absolutely. You're blocking the TV, son. Don't get too excited.
Exactly.
So you said you grew up loving wrestling, and you ended up trained by Dutch Mantell. Am I correct?
Yes. So I was, the closest town to me that held weekly wrestling was Evansville, Indiana. Yeah. At the old Veterans Coliseum downtown. And of course that was a big Memphis town.
Big Memphis town.
So I would go every Wednesday night to Evansville, and started going when I was like 14 years old, riding with friends and stuff. We'd go to Evansville. One night I bought a program, and there was an ad in it that said, have you ever dreamed of becoming a professional wrestler and all this kind of stuff? Send some pictures and a little story about yourself to this P.O. box in Nashville. Yeah. So I did, and a couple weeks later I get a letter back that says, be at the fairgrounds in Nashville, which was the big Jarrett spot, on this particular Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Don't be late. Bring $50 with you. So I get up early. I go down there, and there's like 15 other guys there, and we're all standing around talking amongst each other. Hey, you know, and then a little red Ford Escort pulls up, and Dutch Mantell steps out of it, and I was like, oh my God, that's Dutch Mantell, because we had no idea who was going to be there. I thought maybe it was Jarrett going to do something with us.
Sure, because that was consistent. And, yeah.
And so Dutch gets out, and he walks up, introduces himself to all of us, asks all of us if we had our money, sticks his hand out. We all place money in his hand. He goes, all right, guys, you see the racetrack down there? Yeah. You see that point over there? Yep. He said, start running, and I'll tell you when to stop. And he ran us around that entire parking lot of the fairgrounds until all of us were falling out, thrown up.
Yeah.
Like, literally. And then he's like, all right, guys, y'all are all sick to your stomachs. You're done for the day. Be back Thursday morning, 8 o'clock. Bring me another $50. I'm like, oh, I see where this is going already, you know? And, So
Did he
Thursday
cut
morning,
anybody that day? Did he cut anybody the first day?
No, he didn't cut anybody.
Okay.
Thursday morning rolled around, and it was me and one other guy showed up.
Yeah.
No one else showed back up.
Yeah.
Dutch says, all right, give me your money, start running. Same lap that you did last time. So me and the guy start running, and we run for about 30 minutes. We start throwing up. Then Dutch has us doing Hindu squats and all of this. The whole time outside it, you know, and it was hot. It wasn't overly hot, but it was hot. So Dutch says, all right, we're done for the day. Be back Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock. I was the only one that showed back up. Dutch goes, now that we weeded out the ones that aren't serious, we can start. And that's when we went into the building and started the training, you know.
Dude, that's magic. Now think about how smart Dutch is, okay? First off, here's Dutch, obviously legendary pro wrestler, okay? Comes with a great reputation of training wrestlers, and most guys would stretch the guys immediately, you know, and get them in the ring, stretch them, you know, weed them out that way. No, Dutch is so smart, he didn't even touch y'all. He made you run Hindu squats and pay $50. That's how he got rid of the guys that didn't want to do it. That's another level of Dutch's genius, you know?
Yeah, and I say all the time that Dutch and Jimmy Cornette are probably the two greatest minds in the wrestling industry, period, bar none.
Wouldn't argue that a bit. Yeah.
And a lot of people dispute it a little bit. Dutch is probably the greatest booker to ever be in the business. And I mean, you know, everybody says Dusty was. I think Dutch was.
Yeah.
But I mean,
we can argue that if need be, but I really don't want to. I think you're right, man. I'm going to go with Dutch on that too, because I mean, Dusty kind of turned one trick pony a little bit in the end. You know, that's the problem with guys; they start to run out of ideas. You know, but yeah, and again, I won't argue because I think Dutch. I think you're probably right on that.
So Gator, what was your after all this training and everything? What was your first match?
My very first match was against a guy named Kokla Khan, Terry Adonis. He worked in Memphis off and on. He did like the Green Shadow gimmick in Memphis and all of that kind of stuff. We were in Bowling Green, Kentucky for Dale TNT Mann, who is an old-timer, old-school guy, but he's a promoter.
Yep.
And I was showing up and helping set up the ring and all this kind of stuff. I was paying my dues.
Right.
And had no clue that I was going to work that night.
Yeah.
And somebody didn't show up. Terry went to Dale and said, hey, I've got this kid. You know, I've been working with him a little bit, and let me work him. So they come to me and was like, hey, you're going to work tonight. Get dressed. And I was terrified, scared to death. I mean, I was a kid, you know. Dutch broke me in when I was 15 years old. So
Okay. Wow.
I was still a kid. Lied to the athletic commission so that I could get a license to wrestle in the state of Kentucky. Which
not the first, not the last.
Yeah, exactly. 15 years old, I was 250 pounds, 6'3".
Okay.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, I was a big kid, football player, you know. But I get ready, my music hits, I take off running to the ring. Jumped up on the side of the ring, and he didn't have a regular canvas. He had one of those vinyl
like tarp.
canvases.
Yeah.
Yeah, and whoever had worked the match beforehand had baby oil on and all that good stuff. So I hit the side of the ring and went straight to my back.
Oh, man.
And I was like, well, that's it. My career's over. I'm done, you know.
Oh, man. That's so funny.
But it ended up having a really good match, and Dale liked me, and he was like, you want to be back next week? And I'm like, absolutely. So that was where it all began.
Maybe I missed it. Did you say what promotion that was with?
I'm trying to remember what the name of his promotion was. It was like MWA or something.
Yeah.
Like Mountain Wrestling Association, because he ran a lot of shows in eastern Kentucky over in the mountains.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's what it was Mountain Wrestling Association.
And Dale was pretty famous for doing the kind of like Chris Michaels and taking characters that were kind of famous and maybe sticking a last name on the people and stuff. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but whatever it is. But this is a question that kind of, so what name were you going by at that point, Gator?
My very first match, I was Jumpin' Joe Hopkins because I didn't have my gimmick yet. I didn't know what I was going to do and what I was going to be. So for probably the first 4 months, I wrestled as Jumpin' Joe Hopkins. Okay. And then I was like, yeah, I can't do that. I want something that's catchy and flashy. And that's when me and Dutch got on the phone, and he gave me advice on how to come up with my gimmick and all of that stuff. So.
And even though you are Joe, you're definitely not a Jumpin' Joe, man. You're 6'3", you're a big kid. That's dumb. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? But you know what it is. I mean,
yeah, exactly. And that was the name that Dale Mann put on me.
Sure. Sure.
So it wasn't me. It didn't work for me. I didn't do drop kicks, you know, nothing. So there was no jumping other than off the ring to the floor. That was about it.
Yeah, no jumping. So, okay, Gator McAlister. It's a great wrestling name, man. I've always name. Yeah, it is. I've always thought that. And ever since I've met you, I was like, man, that is the best wrestling name ever. So tell me, where did you come up with that? How did that come up?
So, me and my first wife, 19, I don't even remember what year it was, probably around 89. I guess we're sitting around and I'm like, I have to come up with a wrestling gimmick, you know, and we're brainstorming. And I had the TV on. It was on TBS at the time. And the movie White Lightning came on, which is an old Burt Reynolds movie where he's a moonshiner. His name in the movie is Gator McAlister.
That's right.
And to this day, that's still what Bill Dundee calls me.
Yeah.
But
that's
she
funny.
says, "What's up with that?" And I said, "What?" She said, "Gator." And I was like, "Well, I really like that, but I can't be Gator McAlister. Everybody will associate it with the movie, you know."
Yeah.
And so she was like, "Okay, well, we'll come up with something for a last name." She was like, "So just sit on and think on that. Think on the Gator thing." Well, that movie goes off. I'm still sitting around just piddling, and a movie called Ode to Billy Joe come on. Which is an old Bobby. It was based off of an old Bobby Gentry song.
Yeah.
About a kid named Billy Joe McAlister.
Yeah.
And I went, "What do you think about that?" She's like, "What?" And I said, "Well, McAlister." She goes, "Well, is it a common name for Louisiana?" Because I knew that I was going to be from Louisiana.
Right.
So I actually had a New Orleans phone book because that was one of my favorite places in the world to go to. And I got it, and I started flipping through it. And there was like 10 pages of McAlisters.
Wow.
But it was spelled McAllister. So it was like McAllister.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it, and I told her, I said, "I want to spell it different. I want to be a little bit different with it." And she said, "Okay." So I dropped one of the C's, and I dropped one of the L's. So it became, instead of McAllister, it was McAlister.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Yeah.
I called Dutch up and I said, "Dutch, I got it. I got the gimmick. I got the name." He said, "What is it?" And I told him, and he said, "I really like the sound of it." He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm going to be from New Orleans." He's like, "Do you know how many GD wrestlers there are from New Orleans?" You know how Dutch is. He started kind of spazzing on me. I said, "Okay, what about Rouge?" He said, "Are you related to Sherry Martell?" I said, "No." He said, "Then why be from Baton Rouge?" I'm like, "Okay, Dutch, where am I going to be from? Dirt, Texas, or Oil Trough?" And he kind of, and he said, "Get a map of Louisiana." He said, "Study the map." He said, "Scan every town that you see, and when you find a place that sounds completely made up, that's when you know where you're going to be from."
Oh.
So I did, and just off the coast of Louisiana is a national wildlife refuge place, and it's a little island, and it's called Marsh Island Wildlife Refuge. And I was like, "That's it. That is it. I am Gator McAlister from Marsh Island, Louisiana." And I ran with it, you know.
Love it.
And,
yeah.
Everything from that day forward, everything for me changed in the wrestling business.
Dude, that is awesome. That makes so much sense too. I got a quick little story. I was doing I don't know if you remember me doing the Sheik Prince Omar gimmick at all, Joe, but yeah, okay. I didn't know if you'd remember that. Well, one day at a Byrd show, Dutch was working, and Dutch looked me up and down, and I was wearing that gimmick, and I could tell he was, wheels were turning. He said, well, you just managed me. You're all right, but we got to get you a different gimmick. There's not much going there with a Caucasian Middle Easterner. So he actually didn't come up with a new gimmick for me, but he pushed me in that direction to just drop the gimmick and be myself. So anyway, got to give Dutch is, like you said, he's one of the smartest guys in the business and has a great mind. Yeah, absolutely. So I was doing my research, and this is crazy, man. So we are from a little town called Lebanon, Virginia, probably like 3,000 population tops. It's real close to Bristol, Virginia, Bristol, Tennessee, whatever you want to call it. But you actually worked at a high school in Oakwood, Virginia. It's Garden High School, and you worked for Smoky Mountain there. Now, again, I don't want to go too far into that, but why don't you lead us up to going to Smoky Mountain, if you don't mind?
That was all Dutch. I knew about Smoky Mountain. And they did a big show in Knoxville called Fire on the Mountain.
Oh yeah.
And it was it wasn't pre-pay-per-view, but if they would have done pay-per-view, that would have been Smoky Mountain's WrestleMania.
Exactly.
Where Smoky Mountain was run by Jim Cornette and had the Armstrongs and the Rock and Roll and everybody there. Well, Dutch had started a deal that he was doing called Ring of Dreams. And what it was, you could just take normal people, give them a crash course in wrestling for like 2 weeks, and then guaranteed them like a dark match, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So we had this professor from like New England somewhere. Like the guy was a professor at a big university up there, and he wanted to do it. It had been a dream of his, but he wasn't a big guy, little scrawny fella, So Dutch brought him to my wrestling school that I was actually had at the time, and we crash coursed him enough to get him through like a 6-minute match. And Dutch says, "Okay, you need to come with me," talking to me, to Fire on the Mountain. I said, "Why?" He said, "Because that's where we're going to do this match." I'm like, "Are you serious?" He goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay." So we go and we do this match, and all of the boys come out of the back. Jimmy Cornette comes out of the back. At that time, Taz was working for Cornette at Smoky Mountain. Road Dogg was under a mask, all those guys were there. So everybody comes out and watches this match, sees the bumps that I'm taking and how I'm feeding this guy and making him shine, and it was recorded for him. And we get done, we go towards the dressing room, and they wouldn't let us go into the actual dressing room where the boys were. Well, all of them started coming over talking to me. And Cornette comes over to me, and he goes, "You did good, kid." And I was like, "Well, thank you, Mr. Cornette," and he goes, "Interested in doing some TV shots for me?" And I'm like, "Done. You just tell me when and where I'll be there," And so that's how it came about. And then, like, I rode with Dutch quite a bit, doing Smoky Mountain towns, working with guys like Tracy Smothers, working with Ron and Don Harris, Chris Candido, Brian Lee, Killer Kyle. Got to work with all of the James boys, Brad, and Brian, and with Armstrongs. I worked with all of them. It was fun. Ended up doing several shows for Cornette that weren't televised.
Okay.
I think I did 4 or 5 televised, and then did like a bunch of the spot shows for him.
Yeah. Well, this one specifically was in Oakwood, Virginia, at Garden High School, which is so close to us. We could basically spit and it would land there. And of course, you worked 3 matches in one day, it appears. Killer Kyle, Bruise Brothers, and Tracy Smothers. How was it working 3 matches in one day?
We spread it out.
Sure.
The Tracy match was the very first match that I worked. And it was the very first match of the night. So me and Tracy kind of set the pace. Then it was probably an hour and a half before I went back out. When I went back out, it was a tag match against Ron and Don Harris.
Which is intelligent because that gives you some more rest, and you know you don't have to work the full match. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And then the third match is when they were doing the Beat the Champ gimmick there, and Killer Kyle was the champion at the time for the Beat the Champ thing, and they drew my name out of the hat, so I had to go out and work him. And out of the three matches, I love Tracy Smothers, one of the best in-ring guys that I've ever been in the ring with. But of all of those matches, the match that I had with Killer Kyle was my favorite, and it was because he actually gave me a little shine.
Oh, okay, got it.
Tracy, I was just out there to make Tracy look good, and of course Ron and Don, you know, nobody got any kind of shine with Ron and Don. It was like,
you showed how well you can sell with them. That's your shine with them.
Exactly. And like Killer Kyle, his gimmick was he was like this mafioso hitman type guy, you know, carried the violin case ring and all that stuff. And Mark was just so cool. He was so nice to me. He was like, "Who broke you?" And I was like, "Dutch." He goes, "Oh, well, we're going out and have a good match then." You know, and that was it. And he went out and let me get my shine in on him, and then he cut me off and took it home. And so it meant a lot. And then me and him ended up getting together later, a few years later in WCW, and actually traveled together.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Now, with that being said, now, how much longer did you spend working Smoky Mountain, or did it kind of end there for you there?
You know, yeah, it pretty well did. It wasn't long after that. Dutch went back to Puerto Rico, and Smoky closed up. So I went to work for Memphis after the Smoky Mountain thing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing Memphis TV, but they put me on all of the house shows.
Yeah.
You know. So.
And this is USWA at the time, of course. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It was USWA, which I was working for Byrd Prentice, and Byrd is the one that got me in the door with Memphis. Introduced me to Randy Hales and Guy Coffey and all of them. And then I was working a lot of Memphis guys on Byrd's shows, Brian Christopher, Jerry Lawler, and all of them. So it really Byrd opened up a lot of doors for me.
Gotcha. That's awesome.
Gator, did I see that you'd worked in Puerto Rico some? And I would maybe assume that was with Dutch.
Yes. That Dutch was booking in Puerto Rico, and he called me up one night. And out of the blue, he was like, "Man, I need some familiar faces over here." He said, "You want to come over and work?" And I'm like, "Done." You know what I'm doing? And he's like, "Well, can't guarantee you any kind of major money and all this and all that." He's like, "But you'll be over here. It'll be a good experience for you." You know, I was like 21, 22 at the time. I'm like, "Yeah, you know, I'm down." So went to Puerto Rico. That's where I met Glenn Jacobs. Worked him for the very first time.
Wow.
Which I was scared to death working with him. He's a monster, you know.
Yeah, of
one
course.
Of the nicest, gentlest guys I've ever been in the ring with. And I got to meet and work with Eddie Gilbert.
Oh, very nice.
I grew up watching Eddie, you know. So
yeah, for sure.
Me and Eddie actually got really, really, really close while I was on the island. Eddie took care of me. I was actually the last American wrestler to work with Eddie before he passed away.
Man, so sad.
So,
we talk about it all the time. Like, what would he be doing now? I feel like he might even have his own very famous promotion. You know, he would be, you know, unless he just decided to leave it all alone and do something different. But I just feel like somebody would be using him right now as a, you know, a high level executive, you know, so.
I have no doubt, you know.
Now, you didn't do any icy hot on anybody down there like Wolfie did for Armadito, right?
No, I couldn't do all that. I was too scared, you know. My first night at one of the shows, Dutch tells me, he's like, "You're going to be a babyface. I don't want to put this much heat on you as a heel." I said, "Okay." So he's like, "Your dressing room's over there." I'm like, "Okay." I go over, and I go into the dressing room, and there's like 10 guys in there. I go in, I say hello to everybody. I sit down, and everybody gets up and walks out of the dressing room except for Invader.
Gotcha.
anybody that knows anything about the wrestling business knows who Invader is.
Right.
And so I'm, in my mind, in my adolescent mind, I'm thinking, this is the guy that killed Bruiser Brody. He doesn't like Americans. He's going to kill me.
And it wasn't that long ago. That wasn't that long ago, you know.
Exactly. And so I'm terrified, and he gets up, and he's got this weird look in his eyes, and I'm thinking, here we go. You know, I have no knife on me. I have no gun, nothing. I'm just going to take
Bruiser
this.
Brody, you know.
Yeah. And he comes over, sticks his hand out, introduces himself to me, sits down beside me. And we had a hell of a conversation. He talked about when he wrestled in the States. He knew exactly where I was from. Ended up being a really nice guy. I'm not sure what happened with him and Brody. I wasn't there, so I can't speak on it. But he treated me very well and with a lot of respect while I was on the island. So
yeah. And with me and Jared, you'll never find two bigger Bruiser Brody fans. I mean, honestly, we love him, but we know that he can be hard-headed. We know that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And nobody knows truly what happened. I mean, honestly, nobody. I mean, I know Dutch knows a lot of it. I know Tony Falk was there. I know Abdullah was there. I know Tony Atlas. I know all these guys knew a little bit about the deal, and probably more than anybody has ever let on. But when it comes down to it, nobody actually knows what happened in that locker room. But, you know, that's impressive.
I would say two people know, and that was Brody and Invader, and one of them can't talk about it.
One of them can't, and the other one won't, you know, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how long were you in Puerto Rico?
I was in Puerto Rico for a couple months. I flew back a few times, and then, you know, over that couple month period there, I was kind of flying back and forth, taking care of things in Kentucky and all of that. But it was fun. It was a really good learning experience. The first time I'd ever worked a show where we had to call in riot squads to get the boys out of the building.
Holy cow.
I mean, it was wild. Very wild over there.
Yeah. Now, what was the famous hotel that everybody stayed at, or motel, or whatever it was called? Do you remember the name?
I cannot remember the name of it.
I've heard it a million times. Yeah.
Yeah. If I was here, I'd be like, that's it. That's the name, but I can't think of it. Too many concussions. It's really close to the airport. It was like a block away from a Denny's where we all went to eat. And across the street from the Denny's was a bird fighting arena, a cockfighting arena. Across the street from the Denny's. And I asked Dutch one time, I said, hey, let's go to the chicken fights. He was like, no, we're not going to no chicken fights neither. They will kill us in there. I'm like, okay, never mind, you know.
Don't want to die.
Let's don't.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, I'm sorry, you grew up in Kentucky. We grew up in Southwest Virginia. Chicken fighting's a real popular thing, man. You know, we won't name names, guys, but, you know, may or may not have seen it ourselves. Let's just say that. We'll go with that.
Exactly.
That's right.
Anyway, I remember the first time my brother and I saw it. It was just like, holy crap, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah. But we're not going to admit any more than anything else. So, okay, you come back from Puerto Rico, and now I know you'd worked in USWA prior to Puerto Rico, but you actually come back and you actually worked for Colorado Kids. So Bert was your connection. So he basically, you took the time to go to Puerto Rico, and then you come back and work USWA. Is that correct as well? So you go back to Memphis?
Yes. Yeah, went back, did some more for Memphis, did some more work for Bert. And in between all of that, I was working for different NWA territories.
Okay, yeah. Tell us about that.
Oh, Lord. I've worked NWA territories, Texas, West Virginia. I worked for Dennis Carluzzo when he was running NWA in Jersey. Doug Gilbert actually set that up for me.
Okay, yeah.
I worked, oh, good Lord, Chicago. There was an NWA territory that was up around Chicago. Worked up there. Florida, held multiple tag titles in the NWA with different partners throughout the years.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Trying to think. And then just local independent stuff, like in Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, Illinois area. I did a lot of that in that time frame as well.
Yeah. So you're working USWA, and that was a big deal for you, I would imagine.
It was. It was a really big deal. I mean, that's what I grew up watching. So I'm in the ring with all of my childhood heroes and my influences, and I'm working the same buildings that I had seen on TV, you know, like the Louisville Gardens. I remember the first time I got to work there. First time I worked at the Evansville Coliseum. First time I worked at the Nashville Fairgrounds, you know. The first time I did the Mid-South Coliseum. And
the
so
Loop, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It was doing like some of the little house shows around Western Kentucky and Arkansas, and, you know, which for me, the Louisville Gardens was my Madison Square Garden. You know,
yeah.
To me, working in the Gardens was bigger than working the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis.
Yeah. Which is funny, you know, I'm the co-host of the Wolfie D Show. I know all our listeners know that a million times over now. But, you know, Wolfie always said that the Nashville Fairgrounds was his Madison Square Garden. But, you know, obviously working the Mid-South Coliseum. But he actually liked Louisville better than Mid-South in the terms of how well the Louisville crowds were and how much they just loved the wrestling, you know, there. And
Louisville was the town, in my opinion, for Memphis. It really was.
Yeah, it was a great town and such a legendary building. I mean, the names that have been in that building, it's just blow your mind, you know. So, but
absolutely.
Gator, tell us about IWA Mid-South.
Oh boy. Oh boy. So when I worked for Burt Prentice, me and Bull Payne got really close.
Okay.
And Bull called me up one night. He was like, "Hey, I've got a guy that's going to run Louisville. He needs a promoter's license." I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "And a ring." I said, "Okay." Does he have anything? He's got some talent. I said, "Okay, who is it?" He said, "Ian Rotten." I said, "From ECW?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "He's actually got a ring." He said, "But something fell through for tonight and he can't get the ring. Can you bring your ring and let him, you know, act like you're the promoter for this show?" And I was like, you know, I guess what's the payoff on it, you know, because renting my ring, plus he's using my promoter's license, and am I going to be booked on the show? Yeah, you're going to work. I said, okay. So we work out a deal. I go up, I meet Ian Rotten, and he told me that night, a guy named Mike Golden, who him and his dad built wrestling rings for a lot of Tennessee and Kentucky, West Virginia and Virginia promotions. They built really good steel rings. And he did like the big cowboy gimmick. So me and him work, and we get done, go to the back. Ian Rotten's like, "Wow," you know. I was like, "What?" He goes, "Dude," he's like, "You just went out there and took complete control of my show." I was like, "No, I just went out there and did what I do, you know."
Yeah.
And he goes, "You've got a job. Plain and simple. You've got a job. I want you here every single show that we run." I'm like, "Okay," you know. And it worked really good for a while. And Ian was bringing in all these like top name guys, a lot of the ECW guys, the Public Enemy, 911, had Dutch working, Tommy Rich, Doug Gilbert, and then some like high flying guys, Reckless Youth from up north. Anybody that was hot on independence at the time, Ian was bringing them in, you know. And of course, anybody that knows about IWA knows it was a blood and guts deal, you know. Met Pondo and Ian Rotten out there in barbed wire and thumbtacks and broken glass. I love Pondo. What up, Pondo? And all of this kind of stuff. And the athletic commission started to really hammer down. So they show up one night to the show and tell us that me and Ian and my ex-wife, because the promoter's license was in her name, had to go to Frankfort, Kentucky, to the offices of the athletic commission for a meeting. We're like, okay. So we go to the meeting, and they proceed to tell us that there's going to be no more blood, no more this, no more that.
Oh, my God.
If we do it again, they're going to strip me of my license, my wrestling license, and they're going to take my promoter's license away from me. So I told Ian, I said, "Ian, you've got to find somebody else to do the promoter license thing. I can't risk losing that." Yeah. He was like, "No, I understand completely." He's like, "Well, you keep working for me." I said, "Yeah, I'll keep working for you." So he ended up getting, I think it was Rico Beatty, who was one of his ring announcers. I think he's the one that ended up getting the promoter's license. and that's how they continued running after I pulled my promoter's license away from the situation.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I mean, we know IWA Mid-South is legendary for a lot of things. I mean, definitely got a hardcore vibe in there, but also, like CM Punk, Samoa Joe, so many of these guys that are still wrestling today got their start there because they were coming down from the north. It was kind of like a meeting ground from the north and the south, and
right.
a lot of guys came in there. I know you worked some guys like Todd Morton, Tommy Rich, Ox Harley, Madman Pondo in a big old match with all a bunch of guys there. I guess the one I want to ask you about, though, is talk about working Tommy Rich, man.
Oh, I love working with Tommy. Tommy is so much fun to work with. One of the easiest guys I've ever been in the ring. Everything with Tommy flowed. I mean, it wasn't, I don't want to say it was magic, but it flowed, and it was so easy, and it was flawless. I mean, there was no effort that you had to put into it when you were in the ring with Tommy.
Right.
Which I was over with Doug and Tommy because of Eddie Gilbert.
Right.
The first time I met Doug and Tommy was on a Memphis show that we were doing in Arkansas.
Okay.
And I walked up and I introduced myself to him, and Doug stood straight up and he said, "You're the Gator that was in Puerto Rico with my brother." And I said, "Yes." And he gave me a hug and he said, "Eddie thought the world of you."
Yeah.
He said, "Over with Eddie, you're over with me."
That's all I need.
Stood up and said the same thing.
If you're over with Eddie and you're over with Doug, you're over with me, brother Wildfire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was always, like friends and stuff being in there with each other instead of a legend with some green guy.
Right.
So I never had any issue with Tommy at all.
Yeah, dude. One time in the back at Saw Gator, it was so funny. I was standing there and, you're waiting to go out there. And as you're standing there to walk up the steps to go down the ramp from the back, I'm standing there and the music's playing and I'm an idiot. And I always start doing air guitar. I carried a cane. I started doing air guitar and, Tommy and Doug were there and Tommy looks over and he pokes Doug and he says, "Hey, Doug. Old Sheiky's playing the guitar."
He told me one time we were up there for IWA, and he come over, he's like, "Gator." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Go up there and tell Wildfire a beer." I was like, "Tommy, what kind of beer you want?" He's like, "Hell, I don't care as long as you start with a B." I was like, "All right."
He didn't care as long as it started with a B.
Yeah.
That is legendary. God bless Tommy Rich, man. So, okay, so you work for IWA Mid-South, and you keep working there, and you worked there for a good amount of time. Am I right?
Yeah, I was probably a couple of years.
Yeah.
I had, some phenomenal talent, and I had some great matches with people. I had some really bad injuries there. That's where I broke my back.
Man.
Working Tracy Smothers.
Man.
It was one of those freak things. It was a chair shot to the back and shattered 2 vertebrae. And it wasn't even that it was a chair shot. It was just one of those freak accidents that happened. Tracy felt bad.
I bet he felt horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, tears flowed because me and Tracy had known each other for years, so he felt really bad about that. Tom Burton, Dirty White Boy, broke my neck.
Oh my God. Tom Burton. Talk about Tom, man. Because I've heard Dirty White Boy and Tom, Dirty was not happy in that tag team, I've heard. And Tom is, even though he may not have showed it, he was definitely not happy in that tag team. Now, yeah, talk about Tom Burton and Dirty White Boy, man.
Tom was one of those guys, if he thought that he could get something over on you, he would try it.
Right.
In the dressing room, super nice guy. I never had an issue with Tom at all.
Yeah.
Until that night.
Yeah.
And, he was with Candy Divine. Candy always showed me a lot of respect, treated me nice.
Sweetheart, I've heard she was a nice. Yeah.
Yeah, she was. And Tom had always been really good with me. And when he came to IWA, he thought that he was in Japan, and he was having to do strong style and shoot on guys.
Oh, God.
And he was known for doing, throws, German suplexes, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Well, I was hurt from the week before in IWA, and I told him, I said, "Tom, we'll do anything you want to do." I said, "All I ask is please don't give me any throws. I'm hurt."
Yeah.
Okay, kid, whatever you say.
Right.
So we get in the room, we lock up, and he immediately spins me around and dumps me on top of my head with a shoe.
Oh my gosh, man.
I mean, the very first thing, right off the bat, boom, and broke my neck. It broke my neck, and I was terrified. The impact to my head was so bad, I went blind while I was out there.
Wow.
I backed myself into a corner, and it was actually I wanted to say a 6-man tag. It was, I believe, Madman Pondo, Tom Burton, and Macho Warrior Rick Hogan.
Yes.
Again, me, Ian Rotten.
Gypsy Joe?
Maybe. No, it might have been Ox Harley. I can't remember.
Yeah. Okay.
Who the third man was on our team. But I backed myself into a corner, and I grabbed Ian. I said, Ian, I'm blind. I can't see, and I'm hurt. Tom hurt me. Ian's like, just sit right here. Just sit right here. So Ian goes in. He gets Tom. They go to the floor. Well, I feel around, and I feel a 2x4. And I pick it up, and I held it. And anytime I felt like somebody was coming near me, I swung it. You know, I didn't know who was coming. I wasn't taking any chances.
Right.
We get to the dress. Bull Payne grabs hold of me, and he's like, come with me. He lays me down on the floor, does some feeling and stuff. He wraps a towel around my neck and tells me not to take it off. Ian comes in, hands me my envelope. He said, go to the hospital and go now. So I ended up going to the hospital. They CAT scans, x-rays, all that. That's how we found out that my neck was broke.
Man.
And, I went back the next week. I was in like the halo and all that stuff. And I had talked to Bull on the phone. I'm like, Burton broke my neck, you know? So Bull's like, okay. So I get to the show the next week, and Bull calls me to the side, and he goes, I'm working Tom tonight. I'm like, okay. He goes, I'm getting your receipt for you. I'm like, okay, why? He's like, because. And Bull Payne went out there, and I mean, beat the shit out of Burton. Burton was crying. Bull beat his ass so bad, Burton was crying.
Oh,
and,
what you do that to me for, Bull, man?
Yeah. And I worked Tom a couple times after that and never felt anything he did. And I guess it was because he figured if he shot shooting on me again, that he'd have to deal with Bull, you know?
Yeah. Man, how long did it take you to heal from that?
So my back, I was back in the ring in a month.
Okay.
My neck, I was out for 3 months and went back against doctor's orders, but I couldn't take it no more back in the ring.
Yeah, right, of course. I mean, we're crazy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome one more time to the Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling podcast. And back one more time, my old buddy, Jeremiah Plunkett. What's up, Plunky? How you doing today, buddy?
Hey, buddy. Always good to be here.
Hey, man. Always good to have you. How's the NWA treating you?
It's treating me good. It's always a golden opportunity to be there, man. It's a highlight of my life.
Man, that's awesome. I'm so proud of you, brother, and I pull for you every time I see you on the show. So, you know, back in the day, man, when I borrowed that whole booklet of DVDs from you one time, out of that whole booklet, what was your favorite stuff to watch?
I don't know, man. Like, you know, I grew up on the big two, so obviously there was a bunch of that. And then it kind of graduated to Memphis wrestling. But I think when I got to the 2000s, when I got a little bit older, I found out that independent wrestling was a thing, and I started consuming that as much as possible. In fact, there was just one. Oh, man, it's like a cult classic. Most people probably would not have heard of it, but it was called the Wrestling Mayhem Federation. They ran in the 90s some, but I didn't discover them until the 2000s. Me and my buddy Chris would stay up late, and we'd watch the local college channel, Comcast Channel 10, if I remember right. And actually, some people that you might know and that you have told about were on that to just kind of getting their start. I mean, Quentin Charisma was there, who ended up being my mentor. Mikey Woods, who ended up being the guy to train me. You know, there's like Mark Gordy, Kevin the Thug Jones. He could go off on a crowd like no one else. Hot Rod Biggs was there, former guest of the podcast. You saw a lot of guys like in their element, and it was a really niche thing, but it's super entertaining.
Man, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's called the WMF. I found them on YouTube recently. WMF Medium Rare channel. I actually reached out to the show's producer, Monte Carlo, who was actually part of the show himself. He had a French filmmaker gimmick or something like that. What I will say about it is I do know the gimmick was awesome, but what's even better is the production level on these videos that he was making, man.
Yeah, man, he was doing a lot with a very little. And I think the show ran for roughly a year, and it had run like 5 nights a week. So no matter what, me and Chris would be on the phone and we'd be watching it and we'd be talking to each other. It had its own vibe about it, man.
Just absolutely great matches. Y'all got to go check out the WMF Medium Rare channel on YouTube today. Starting September 1st, they're posting the whole final year of WMF on the YouTube channel. And I just wanted you to come by and help spread the word for it. You've got to click subscribe and hit that notification bell to make sure that you're notified.
That's right, man. Yeah, just go to YouTube and type in WMF Medium Rare. And remember, Jimmy, that's not raw. It's WMF Medium Rare.
So you go from that and you go to actually a quite, legendary man and working for Heartland. But between that, you had your promoter's license, you had your own ring. Were you also running your own shows as well?
Yes. I started a promotion. I ran it around Madisonville, Kentucky area. It was called Kentucky Independent Wrestling Federation, KIWF.
Yeah.
And we would run at the local National Guard Armory, and then we would run little spot shows. We would do like the basketball booster, where the ball team would say, hey, we're running a wrestling show, and that kind of stuff. But I had a pretty solid crew that worked for me. A couple of the guys were some of my trainees. Then, of course, I had Dutch. I had Doug Gilbert. I would bring in, like, Kroll the Death Stalker.
Oh, yeah.
Tony Falk.
That's a shoot,
guys like that. Yeah. Tony Falk's the only guy I ever worked with that would call a match to the crowd.
Yes.
He would back you up into the ropes. He'd be like, if y'all keep cheering, I'm going to shoot him in and give him a clothesline.
I love Tony. Tony is just so great, man. I love him.
Cheering, he's going to reverse it and give me a hip toss, I always loved working with Tony Falk. But yeah, I ran shows for a couple of years, and then started to go through a divorce, and that's what ended the shows for me.
Man.
I ran the Little Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. It was a paid show for me. And we ran it one year, had a huge turnout. They were very well impressed with it, wanted us to start doing it every single year. The second year, I had Luke and Butch, the Bushwhackers, coming in.
Nice.
I had Doug and Tommy, Dutch, a bunch of people, because it was a paid show. And about 3 weeks before the show is when me and the wife split.
Man.
So I was bumped from the show.
Yeah.
I was the damn champion. How are you going to bump me from the show,
Oh, man. So did she take the promotion?
Yeah. She got everything. Literally, when me and her divorced, she got everything. She got my straps that I had. She got the ring, the business, all of it. And, what I understand, she sold a bunch of it here and there and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to her since we went to divorce court. So
yeah, gotcha. So she didn't continue running. She was not even in wrestling. She just wanted to hurt you, essentially.
Right. She tried running a few shows after we had split up, and when the word got out that we had split up, the crowds went from like 400 and 500 paid to 20 and 25 paid.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
People were there to see me, and then, like I had told Dutch, I had told Doug and other guys, hey, don't let this stop you from working for her. If y'all want to work for her, work for her.
Yeah.
And I was no, we were here for you, not her. We care less about her.
Right. So, this is not anything for her. Yeah. She lost the majority of her talent, and so people stopped coming, and the company fucked it up. Who worked on those two shows? I got to ask that question. Do you know any of the names that worked on those shows?
On the Sturgis?
The shows that she ran without you.
You remember Hillbilly Roy Presley?
I heard the name. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, of course, that's who she's married to now. I'm the one who broke him in.
Gotcha.
I'm the one who broke him. But like him, I believe Danny D, the Pink Pansy, like just local guys is all that she ended up getting. Luke and Butch, worked they did the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, and they did the show the night before the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally for her.
Got it. Okay. Understand.
But, I mean,
well, yeah, once they got smartened up, it was over. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Once the boys were smartened up, everybody left.
Yeah, understand. Well, hey, I get that. So you did end up working for Les Thatcher in Heartland. Tell us a little bit about that one, man.
That was really cool. I had originally met Les in Smoky Mountain because he was doing like commentary type stuff with Dutch and all of that stuff. And I knew who Les Thatcher was before that. I mean, he's a legend in the business, And so just a random phone call one day, and I answered the phone. He's like, "Hey, is this Gator?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is Les Thatcher. How are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm great, Les. How are you?" He's like, "I'm good. I got your number from so-and-so." I think it was Dutch. He said he got my number from. He said, "I wanted to reach out and see if you were interested in coming up and doing a few shows with us." I'm like, "Absolutely. Where at?" And he was like, "Well, we're running Cincinnati, Ohio." And he was naming off some other Ohio towns. And I'm like, "You just give me a date and a time and I'll be there." So he gave me some dates. I went up, and honestly, I'm trying to remember who I even worked on his shows. But it was fun. It was great, very professional. Everything about it was awesome. I think I worked Flash Flanagan on one of the shows. Of course, me and Flash had known each other for years.
Flash is great. Flash is great.
Yeah, love Flash. And I'm pretty sure that I worked him on one of the shows because he was getting pushed by Les.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember. I honestly can't remember who all I worked up there. Too many concussions, brother.
Yeah, I totally understand. Hey, yeah.
So you mentioned working for WCW. Tell us a little bit about that.
So there was a guy out of Elkton, Kentucky. He was an old jobber for Memphis, for WWF, for WCW, named J.D. Wolf.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
James Dean Wolfenberger was his name. And me and J.D. met working for Chris Champion. Chris Champion was running shows down in Tennessee, and Chris helped train me with Dutch. So Chris called me up and was like, "I want you to start working for me. I'm going to give you a push, blah, blah, blah." So I was working for him. JD was working for him. And me and JD had a big program. Well, he liked the way I worked. He liked the fact that I was light and not hurting him and all this stuff. So he was like, "Are you interested in working for Atlanta?" And I'm like, "Atlanta? Who's running Atlanta? I know WCW is in Atlanta." He goes, "Yeah, WCW." And I'm like, "I can't work at WCW, And he goes, "No." He's like, "Seriously." He's like, I book talent for him all the time." He said, "Are you interested in going?" I'm like, "Absolutely. I'll do it." So he's like, "Okay, give me a couple weeks." And he calls me up. He says, "Okay." He said, "Saturday, be at Center Stage on Peachtree in Atlanta." I was like, "What time?" He said, "Show up about 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
I was like, "Okay." He goes, "I got a guy that's going to ride with you down there." I said, "Okay, who's that?" He said, "A guy named Johnny Gilbert." I said, "Okay." I had no idea who Johnny Gilbert was. He was another Tennessee local guy,
Yeah.
And so we load up, we take off, and we go. We get there, pull into a parking spot. I get out, I go check the door. I can't get in yet. So we're sitting in the truck, and a horn blows behind me, and I lean out, and it's Ric Flair. And he goes, "Hey, you mind scooting over? You're in my parking spot." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, sorry, Mr. Flair," And,
get out and push the car over. "I'm so sorry, sir."
Exactly. And so we get out, and of course we move. We get out and follow Rick into the building. And, walk in, and it's a who's who at the time. Boss Man was there doing he wasn't doing the Boss Man. I think
was he doing like was he doing Big Bubba, or he did that one that was like the Angel, or what was it?
That's what he was doing, was the Guardian Angel thing.
Guardian Angel, yeah.
That night was Randy Savage's very first night in Atlanta. So I was there for Savage's first night. So you got Flair, and you got Arn, and Sting, and all these guys, that I watch weekly on TV. So I'm kind of starstruck.
Of course.
But I knew, introduce yourself, sit down, shut up, and listen. I did. And Pez Watley come in, and I'd known Pez since I broke into business. He was like my third match.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
Pez come up to me, and he's like, "Hey, kid, you know," and he goes, "I'm going to teach you a trick." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "I'm going to teach you how to get away with not doing a thing in this city and still get paid." I'm like, "Okay." And so Pez taught me how to sign the sign-in book and then disappear, you know.
Oh,
wow.
wow.
They would walk around the back. Literally, those shows were done minutes before they went on live TV. They would walk through the back going, "Okay, yeah, you're going to work Sting. You're going to work Vader. You're going to work Hacksaw Jim Duggan," you know. And so if you weren't seen, you didn't get put on the show, but you still got paid because you signed the book.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, I want to work, you know. So they're walking around, and one of them comes up and is like, "Have you got a match yet?" "No, sir." "All right, you're going to work second with Duggan." I'm like, oh, great. Axel Jim Duggan, okay. You know. And so I went up to Jim Duggan, introduced myself to him, and asked him if there was anything special he wanted me to do and all this. He said, "No, just go out there and work, kid." He said, "I'll let you know I'm blind without my glasses on." I said, "That's okay. I've been stiff before," you know. We go out, we have a match, and he doesn't give me no sales, everything that I do, and all that. But it was fun.
Yeah.
Get done, load up all of our stuff. We're getting ready to leave, and I see Flair go back into the building. So I tell everybody, I'm like, "Hang on a minute." And so I take off back into the building, and I chased him down the hallway, and I walked up and I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Flair." He said, "Yeah." I said, "I just wanted you to know that it's been an honor and a privilege just to be in the same building and on the same show as you." And I stuck out my hand, and he shook my hand, he pulled me in, he gave me a hug. He said, "Call me Rick, kid." And I was like, "Oh my God," you know. And I was like, "Really, I appreciate that. I keep calling you Mr. Flair." And he kind of chuckled and walked off.
Yeah.
And I went back, get in the truck, take off. Well, we stopped, got a room that night, get up next morning, take off. We hit Nashville, and I had one of those bag phones at the time. And the phone rings, I pick it up, and like, "Hey, where are you at?" "I'm in Nashville." "You need to turn around." "Why?" "Flair wants you on this run." I said, "Do what?" They're like, "Flair said he likes you. You're respectful. He wants you on this run for the next week." I was like, "Okay, where do I need to go to?" "Go to Dalton, Georgia tonight." I said, "Okay, I'll be there." And I went and did a week run with WCW. Worked with Vader and Harley Race. Worked with Dustin Rhodes. Worked with Nasty Boys. Did the arm wrestling thing against Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah.
It was cool. You know, I was hanging out in the dressing room with Mark Mero and Triple H.
Yeah. Terror Rising.
Those were the two.
Yeah.
Actually, I think he was doing Jean-Paul Levesque.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Rip high things on his legs and all that. But those were the two guys I sat in between every single night and would just sit and talk and just feed off of them, you know, learning as much as I could possibly learn. Of course, I wasn't green anymore by then. I'd been in the business 70 years, but it was still a learning tree for me, you know.
And you were going by Gary McAlister, if I'm correct on that, right?
Yeah, they would not let me work as Gator McAlister because
it was too good of a name, probably.
Steve Kern was under contract with them, and he was doing Steve the Gator Kern in Florida.
Yeah.
Well, I was Gator before he was Steve the Gator Kern.
Yeah. I've interviewed Steve before, and what's funny is actually, you know, he did Skinner, and then he goes to WCW, and they're going to say, "Okay, we want to make you our Jake the Snake," and he buys all this stuff, and he's a legendary gator hunter. The Skinner gimmick was actually a shoot. A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He buys a snake and they end up going with him with a different gimmick, and he wants him to be more like a fabulous one. So it was a funny story, but he ends up tagging with Bobby Eaton and all that. But long story short, he went from, you know, a fabulous one to Skinner to then once again kind of a fabulous one. But anyway, that makes sense though, that they would want to kind of protect the Gator name, so that makes sense. But yeah, man, Gary, have you ever been Gary again ever in your life?
Nick Patrick, referee, old WCW referee. Nick Patrick is the one that came up with the Gary.
Okay.
He was, because of course his dad, a lot of people didn't know, Jody Hamilton, one of the original assassins, was Nick's dad.
Yeah.
Jody took gorilla position in WCW. He's the one that told you when to go and everything else.
Yeah. So
he's looking at the paperwork and it said Gator, and he goes, "You can't be Gator, kid. Steve Kearn's Gator." And Nick was standing there and he goes, "Call him Gary, Dad."
That's funny. That's funny. Yeah. So have you? Yeah. Well, hey, man, good thing Gary didn't take off. I'm glad you kept Gator. You know. But,
I hate that.
I'm sure you did. Well, my name's Joe. Can we go by Joe McAlister or something? You know, but anyway, that would be the Billy Joe Anyway, so yeah, so that's awesome, man. And I know we dialed it back a little bit there. We couldn't let the show go on without talking about the WCW run. So, okay, so after the Les Thatcher deal, you kind of start working for New Focus for Master Rich up in Evansville and stuff like that. You get to work guys like Brian Christopher and all these great names. But I kind of want to scoot through that. And if there's something great there, don't let me. But I want to scoot through that because I've got to get to the Mayhem tag team. Now, honestly, yeah. Hammerjack is a former guest of ours. Actually, he's probably the reason we no longer have a third host. He eviscerated him. Excellent show. Yeah.
It was a great show with him on.
Hammerjack's awesome. He's very entertaining, and I got a lot of time for Kenny, man. He's a good dude. He actually helped me out a lot. I was in a dark place. I've talked about this a lot, but Kenny was kind of not really physically smacking me around, but he was as far as his words, he was smacking me around. He was like, "Grow up, kid. You got to get, grow out of that." So anyway, but yeah, working with Kenny and Hammerjack, man, I love that Mayhem tag team, and Gator and Hammerjack. And y'all, I mean, it was such a just natural tag team. Talk about getting together. Talk about Hammerjack a little bit.
So me and Hammer have known each other for years and years, like since he broke in the business.
Yeah.
And we hadn't seen each other for several years. Well, they were doing a big show in Murfreesboro. It was kind of like a big benefit show for Dutch Mantell's granddaughter that was killed.
Right.
And so I went to just to support Dutch.
Yeah.
And Hammer was there running around with Brian Lee. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And we got in each other's ear, exchanged phone numbers and started talking quite a bit. Well, 8-9 months goes by or something, and Kroll reaches out to me and he's like, "Hey, give me a call. Here's my number." So I call him. I'm like, "What's up?" And he goes, "Well, I'm down here doing the NWA Saw with TJ."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, TJ Weatherby." And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I've got an idea." I said, "Okay." He said, "We've been doing a deal with Hammerjack and Boogie, and Hammerjack's out. He's hurt, so him and Boogie can't team, and he can't watch Boogie's back and all this kind of stuff." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You and Hammer look a lot alike." He said, "My ideal is I want to bring you in, have you hit the ring on Boogie, and make everybody think that it's Hammerjack."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, yeah, sure, why not?" So I go in, I do that deal, and Hammer's not even there that night, but I go in, do the deal with Boogie. They kill the lights, and then there's lights flashing, so
everybody thinks it's Hammer. Yeah.
Right. The next week, we do something similar. I go out, I attack Boogie, and they leave the lights on. So people are like, wait a minute, that's not Hammerjack. It's an imposter Hammerjack.
Right.
We don't even know this guy's name, Well, the third week, Hammer's back. And so I hit the ring. Well, behind me comes Hammer. He hits the ring.
Yeah.
And we go nose to nose, face to face. And there's all these baby faces in the ring. And, of course, you got Hot Rod Biggs and everything on the mic. "Oh, my God, this is going to be brutal." And
this is going to be brutal.
Well, Hammer drops back like he's going to hit me and spins and hits one of the baby faces. And I spin and hit another baby face, So we clean the ring.
Yeah.
And then they had Brother Brewster.
Brewster, yeah.
And so they were like, we're going to make you guys this tag team, and we're going to put you with Brother Brew, but we don't have a gimmick for you. Well, anybody knows Brew knows he's a biker.
Right.
And
right.
I was a biker, so it came natural for me and him. And we were like, why don't we call ourselves Mayhem? We'll get these motorcycle vests and the whole 9 yards, and we'll just go out there and be violent.
Yeah.
You know, we'll like we're in a motorcycle club just beating people down. So
yeah, that's great.
That's what we did, you know, and like they fed people to us just to squash. Looked really mean on TV. People were saying we were the I've got a screenshot somewhere from one of the chat room groups or something on the internet at the time, talking about Mayhem is the most violent tag team that has been seen since like the early days of the Road Warriors and the Moondogs, and you know, so like people were buying into the gimmick.
Oh yeah.
And they put the belts on us. We fought a lot with Plunkett.
Kevin Weatherby. You squash poor Kevin Weatherby every week with LT and everybody.
Weatherby was one of our helpless victims, you know. But we worked a lot with Plunkett, which was funny because
the Untouchables, great tag team, man. Yeah.
Yeah, Plunkett and Drew worked on one night for the belts, and Hammer's in there with Plunkett, and he's doing all this stuff. And Plunkett crawls over to the corner to me, and he goes, "Please God, tag in." Kenny was beating the hell out of him. Kenny was being stiff as could be. Of course, Kenny was trained by Gypsy, you know, so he was stiff.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, his first bump was on the concrete somewhere. He had to prove that he can.
Yeah, like,
can you take a flat back? It was on asphalt or something. Yeah.
And then we worked a lot with Team IOU. Carrie
yes,
and Nick.
Which Carrie's another Dutch trainee, so y'all fit right in with each other, you know?
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, me and Carrie worked really well together. And then I don't know for sure what happened, why they decided they were going to split us up. I know they brought in more help for the booking, and that's when everything started kind of going south for us. They took the straps off of us. Come in and was like, "Hey, we've got this idea. We want you to turn your back on Hammer and you know, strip him of his cut, and we're going to put you guys in this big feud, and then we're going to run with you solo as a single. Drop a strap on you, let the babyface chase you, and all this." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, that's what y'all want to do, whatever." Me and Kenny neither one liked the ideal because we knew what we had, you know.
Yeah, it was a great tag team. Y'all, I mean, seriously, yeah.
Seriously, me and Kenny were magic. We looked alike in the ring. We worked alike in the ring. I mean, so it was magical what we had. And, of course, the big blow-off for me and him was the cage match.
Yep.
On that
was the
big
night.
Anniversary.
Collision Course 2014. Yep. We just did a show with Kroll and Plunkett talking about that whole match with him and Satoshi Kojima.
Yeah, that was the big Kojima and Plunkett match. Me and Kenny in the steel cage. Of course, Bruce Thorpe, who was president of the NWA at the time, was there. Everybody was there.
Yep.
We go out, we do a big match. Gator's bleeding all over the damn place. Get back to the dressing room. Everything's great. Get envelopes. Go home. Call Kroll a couple of days later. "Hey, what's up? You know, are we booked up for what's going on for this weekend?" "Yeah, you're not on the show this weekend, but we'll get you back in here." And I never got booked again. I don't know what happened.
Man.
And of course, me and Kenny still talk about it. You know, like, why did they split us up? Why'd they do this? Why'd they do that? Neither one of us really know. We've got our suspicions, and our suspicions are the same, but we don't know for sure. So.
Yeah. I mean, would you care to share that suspicion?
Nah.
I got you.
It involves a specific person.
I understand.
It came in to help with the books. And I think it was a jealousy situation.
Totally understand. Yeah, so, I mean, when did you kind of wrap up your career?
So, which kind of backpedal a little bit. In 2009, March the 7th, 2009, I hit a tree at 75 mile an hour on a Harley. They were going to amputate my left arm and my left leg. The whole left side of my body's metal. Told me I'd never walk again. Definitely never wrestle again, all of this kind of stuff. July the 14th, I was in Jacksonville, Florida, wrestling that year. But I have a lot of pain hurt constantly. And then I started driving a truck. And this pays really, really good.
Oh, yeah.
Like 6 figures a year, you know. And I couldn't take a risk anymore of getting in there with some greenhorn that doesn't know what he's doing, that's going to drop me on my head or put on a figure 4 wrong or even a hammerlock wrong and break something that's going to prevent me from being able to drive this truck.
Yeah.
So I decided then that it was time for me to step away, and it stopped being fun. And I always said that when wrestling quit being fun for me and became more like a job, that I would walk away from it.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty well what I did. So I called up Master Rich, and I'm like, hey, you know, I'm done, man. I want to do my last show up there with you. It's close enough to my hometown that people can come up. And so we did the big plug. We were going back and forth on Facebook and on Instagram. And I went up and did some run-in spots on him where I wasn't even supposed to be in the building or in the state and all of this. And so we did a deal where if I won the match, I got 100% control of New Focus Wrestling. If he won the match, then I had to hang up the boots. I had to be done.
Yeah.
And, of course, everybody thought that I was going to win.
Right.
Even the boys. None of the boys knew. I think Vic the Bruiser, I told Vic the Bruiser, Vic is probably one of my best friends in the wrestling business and has been for 30 years.
Yeah.
But I told Vic, I said, Vic, I'm hanging them up, man. It's not fun anymore and all this. So I go out, I work Rich, and even let his wife involved in it. Of course, she's a worker. Chloe, Tracy Smothers took her on the road for a while as Chloe Bell Smothers.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it was kind of like a handicap deal, you know, and it was anything goes. So we fought all over the building. He had all of the heels, one at a time, feet out. Of course, I bumped all of them, you know, and it was just a real quick, out of the blue, boom, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
And that was it, man. I did a big spiel on the mic, straight shot. I mean, it was a straight shoot. Everything I said was a shoot.
Yeah.
People, Gary Valiant, Boogie, me and Boogie broke in at the same time. So we've known each other our whole careers. Boogie's out there, got tears going. Vic the Bruiser had some tears going. I had tears going, you know, because end of an era.
Yeah. And you're not one of those guys, once you say you were done, you're not going to keep doing it and going back in and then, you know, okay, one more time. You know? Yeah.
Yeah. And I told, like when I was doing my big spiel on the stick, I told them, you know, you're not seeing the last of Gator McAlister. You've seen the last of Gator McAlister wrestling in a ring, but you've not seen the last of him. I told Johnny, you know, I'll come back up and I'll do a guest manager spot, or I'll come back up and I'll do one of those gimmicks that the boys are doing now where they go and talk with all the green guys and show them
seminars.
Seminars. I told them I'd come up and do some seminars, and I've had promoters beating my door down wanting me to come work. You know, come out of retirement, come do one show for us. No, I'm sorry, I can't, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, hey, man, it's you know, it's definitely been a cool career. You had a lot of fun. Now, you know, as we kind of wrap up every show, we do a little thing called the name game. So, you know, you're talking about you wrapped up your career there. Well, you know, like I said, as we're wrapping up the show, would you like to play the name game with us?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So with these name games, these are just like if you have one word or if you have multiple things you want to say or just you know, something quick about them. You don't have to go too detailed, but you can also say what you like. So thank you so much, and we'll get the name game going here. So DJ, hit the music. All right, we're back with the name game with our guest, Gator McAlister. Now, Jared, take the first one for us.
All right, Gator. So it's the man that broke you in. How about Dutch Mantell? Tell us about him.
Well, I can't use just one word for Dutch.
Of course. Yeah.
Dutch is my hero. If I was going to use one word, that's what it would be, is hero. Amazing. One of the smartest guys that I know, period, in or out of the wrestling. Amazing booker. Wrestling savant.
Absolutely. That's that's great. So the next one I got is Tracy Smothers.
One of the nicest, humblest guys, easiest to get along with, easiest to work with I've ever been in the ring with.
Yeah, he's great. Has a bit of a temper sometimes, right? But, you know.
Oh, yeah, he can.
Yeah, great guy. Okay, my next one this is a deep cut here. How about Shelby Adcock?
Ooh, Hall of Famer. I mean, I don't think he was ever inducted into any Hall of Fames, but Shelby had a heck of a career. His sons had good careers, and he was a great promoter. He helped a lot of guys get started in the business.
And didn't you work for him a little bit early on?
I worked for Shelby for about 5 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So the next one is former guest of the Wolfie D podcast and great guy. I met him a couple times, really good guy, and actually a legend in his field in Madman Pondo.
Phenomenal. Pondo used to live with me. Me and Pondo go back 30 plus years. For what he does, I think he is probably one of the best in the world.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
How about former guest of the show, Hot Rod Biggs?
Hilarious. Biggs is one of the funniest guys I've ever been around. Great talent, great minds for the business, but hilarious. The ribs that he pulls, the jokes that he tells, just funny all the way around.
That's awesome.
And a talker too, right?
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, he can talk on a mic.
He was the only podcast that did not need us. I love Hot Rod. He's a legend, man.
Oh,
love him to death. How about Tony Falk?
Oh, legend. Point blank, period. Legend. Tony, I had more fun working with and for Tony than I think anybody I've ever been in the ring with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was just, Tony just all the way around great.
Yeah.
Got one you mentioned earlier, Ox Harley.
Brother, me and Ox grew up together. We've known each other since we were like 6 years old.
Yeah.
And so, like, we had the neighborhood wrestling championship in his backyard, It's my brother from another mother.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, well, the next one I got is Bull Payne. You talked about him a little earlier, too.
Phenomenal talent. Underrated. I think Bull was one of the most underrated guys in the business. So much talent, so much knowledge, and never got his due. Never got his just due. When they took him to New York, when they took him to Atlanta, they used him for enhancement, and he should have been on the top of the card.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I've never heard a bad thing about Bull. So my next one is Brian Christopher.
Great guy in the ring. Had his demons like most of us did.
Sure.
But always professional in the ring.
Yeah.
I loved working with Brian.
Yeah.
This guy, we've, almost everybody we've had on here has had a good story about him. Gypsy Joe.
Gypsy Joe, one of the greatest ever, period. I loved Joe. Guys were scared to work with Gypsy, and I was the first to volunteer to work with Gypsy.
Oh, wow.
Legendary career, legendary person, phenomenal in and out of the ring, even when he was 70 plus years old,
Yeah. Still the toughest guy in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely the toughest son of a bitch I ever got in a ring with. Anybody that's got New Jack pinging an aluminum ball bat off of their skull and still stands up, looks at him.
Yeah.
I mean, come on,
different breed, man. Different breed.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned him earlier, and we always try to keep him in the name game because he's always just somebody that means so much to a lot of the guys. Chris Champion.
Chris, I can't use one word. I don't even know what word to use for Chris. Chris had his demons, and then he had some medical issues, and that's what stopped him. Chris should have been on top of the wrestling world.
Really, for real, yeah.
One of the best workers I ever seen. I hear so many guys talk about Shawn Michaels was the greatest worker in the ring, and Ric Flair was the greatest. Flair was great at what he did. Right. Flair was phenomenal. I don't think anybody held a candle to Flair. As far as in-ring talent goes, Chris Champion, in my opinion, was one of the best to ever lace up a pair of boots.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that is super cool. I love hearing that. Yeah, like, man, that's one person I regret never getting to. I met him one time, but other than that, I never got to see him in his prime. Let's just say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when Chris was in his prime, there was nobody better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, the next one, and you kind of mentioned them earlier, and we talked about it, and it was funny, but the Untouchables, man. That was a tag team I got to manage, and regretted that I wasn't ready to manage them because I just came out of the Omar gimmick, and I didn't know how to be just Jimmy Street. I didn't know what I could do, and then I went off and worked other promotions and found myself, and then came back and did my thing. But when I was with the Untouchables, unfortunately, you know, I didn't understand how to be a manager for a team that didn't really need me. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But they wanted me.
Right.
So anyway, I'll shut up.
Plunkett and Drew both were amazing solo, singles guys. And then they stuck them in a tag team together. And in my opinion, they could have been the next Rock and Roll Express, the next Fantastics. They could have been the next Horsemen, depending which direction they wanted to go. Amazing talent between the two of them. They clicked. They flowed in the ring. I love Plunky to death. Plunky was just amazing. I didn't have a lot of interaction with Drew other than in the ring. But Plunky, me and Plunkett, we vibed with each other. So that made a big difference in the way we worked with each other.
Absolutely.
But very underrated tag team. I wish they were still together.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is Team IOU.
Another underrated tag team. Great kids. Both of them were young. They had a good look to them. One of them's the preppy, and the other's all tattooed up. They had a great gimmick. I think they should have been able to do a lot more with their gimmick for a lot more promotions than what they were allowed to.
Right.
If that makes sense.
It was a great gimmick, and I've told my brother about this gimmick, a boy and his dog, and it's just like, and dude, today they were so ahead of their time with that gimmick, because today that gimmick would fit in any AEW. I could see them on AEW easily right now,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that they could make it in AEW.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And tell them, talk about this with Kerry being Dutch trained and you being Dutch trained and the differences. I mean, when you all work together, could you tell certain things like, okay, he knows this, that kind of thing with Kerry?
It wasn't like working yourself in a mirror type situation. There were times that there were certain things he would do. I'd be like, Dutch taught you that, huh? Because it was things that Dutch had taught me as well. We both kind of broke off with our own style in the ring, but we still flowed back to that Dutch Mantell style at the same time. If that makes sense. When you're trained by somebody, you pick up their mannerisms. You pick up some of their moves, the way they move in the ring, and all of that. And both of us did that with certain things. Short clotheslines. Both of our short arm clotheslines look identical, which looks identical to Dutch's,
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So the very last one of the name game, and this guy I got to meet a little bit, and I think you helped him out some. I know you're big buddies with him, so we got to talk about Phil Roxo.
Phil Roxo. That's my brother from another mother, honestly. Me and Phil are best friends.
Yeah.
Very, very hungry, I guess would be the word. Hungry would be the one word, because he is hungry for the business. He's hungry for the knowledge about wrestling. He eats wrestling. He sleeps wrestling, even still to this day. And I think that when he finally gets his break, then everybody nationwide is going to know who Roxo is. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a cool style, a cool look. He's a rock and roller, man. You know, a heavy metal kid. Yeah, absolutely.
And just he's got so much talent, and he's afraid to let it out. And I've been trying to slap him around and get him to let it out. He doesn't think he's good enough for this promotion or that promotion, and I keep telling him you're better than half of the people on the card as it is, you know.
Oh, you know, hey man, that is the name game, brother. Gator McAlister, you have passed.
Awesome. I'm glad.
With flying colors, let's just say that. So obviously, you know, I could have brought Hammerjack up on that, but we talked so much about Kenny.
Nobody cares about Hammerjack. They all turn their back on him anyway.
Turn your back on the Hammerjack. Never. Yeah.
Never
but
turn your
you know,
back on the Hammerjack.
I've always got place in my heart for Hammerjack, man. He's always a good dude. So yeah. So Jared, we always wrap up the show with your final question. We start it with your first one, we end it with your last one. And Jared, this one goes to you, brother.
All right, Gator. So this is always a tough question, I know, and I'm sure you're gonna be like, oh man, but it's always, I like to know what your favorite match in your career was.
Oh, there's actually two that are tied for my top.
All right.
I've had so many matches with great opponents, great times in the ring. But the two that rank over everything else for me is a match I had with Eddie Gilbert in Puerto Rico.
Oh yeah.
It was amazing, and it was awesome being in the ring with Eddie, somebody of his caliber, somebody of his knowledge, and he made me look like $1 million, you know. And a match that I had with Terry Funk at a little bar in Louisville, Kentucky.
Holy cow.
And Terry, like, they wanted Terry to go over. Terry was like, I'm not going over on this kid. He's here every week, you know. So we did a double count out. We just fought back to the dressing room, and Terry's like, get a beer, kid, you know. I'm like, okay. And so that Terry Funk would not pin me in the middle of the ring just showed the amount of respect that he had for me, you know, and it made my amount of respect for him as a legend in the business skyrocket. So those two matches are probably the two number one matches that I've had out of a 32-year career.
Man, yeah, Terry Funk's on my Mount Rushmore, but we weren't talking my Mount Rushmore, but Terry's definitely on mine, Lawler and those guys. But anyway, dude, that's amazing. And I'm sorry we didn't cover that one earlier, but I'm glad you finished with that.
No reason to be sorry.
Yeah.
No reason to be sorry at all, brother.
Gator, thank you so much, brother. You've been on the list from the start. I've had you on this list. And thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. It really means the world.
Jimmy Street, thank you, brother. It meant a lot to me to be able to do this with you. You know, my number, you got my number. I'm always available for you. You're amazing as always. Jared, you're amazing, brother. It was great talking with you. Hopefully I did your podcast some good.
You did, man.
You did, man. This is going to be a good one. I can't wait for the people to hear it. And you know what's cool, man, is I get to learn about people that I absolutely respect. And research does one thing. It tells me some things, but those little connective tissue that you can talk about it and that fills in the blanks, man, there's nothing like that. Because to me, you know, I knew you at one time in your career, but you had a whole career before that. And just to learn so much about you. And now I realize, you know, I respected you immediately because it felt like that was, I could tell you were a man to be respected, but now I know why everybody else respected you. And man, man, like I said, you were on the list from the start, and I'm so glad you were able to do this with us. And we'll get you back on. Maybe we'll bring you back on and do a watch along sometime, and we'll, you know, talk about a match or something. Yeah. We'll have fun,
Absolutely.
Man. Yeah. But
sounds good to me. Always available for you, brother.
Yeah, brother. Thank you. Gator, do you have any shout outs you'd like to give before we hang up today?
A shout out to just to my people, you know, Roxo, Hammerjack, you know, anybody and everybody, Vic the Bruiser, Man Pondo. Love you guys, man. Shout out to you for having me on.
Oh, of course.
It's been great, and you know, give me back my pro wrestling, man, and We need to get it back like it was. And don't forget the guys that have gone on, you know, Chris Champion, Tracy's mother, Gypsy Joe. Go back and watch old matches of them, you know, to all these people listening. You want to see real wrestling and see what it was like for us back when I broke in the business. Go back and watch those guys, because there's nothing like it on TV today. I can promise you that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's the whole reason for this podcast. Is it started out as me and my brother just talking about pro wrestling and hitting the record button while we did it. And then we had Jeff Daniels on, we had Chris Michaels, we had Hammerjack on, and we had Cassidy Riley, and we had Dave Milliken, and then we had Jeff Daniels. And man, that Jeff Daniels show just put us in a different level, stratosphere. Let's just say that. And then people went back and, listened to our very first episode with my buddy and longtime friend Jeremiah Plunkett, and so many guys that we've had on and just been so blessed. Shane, Morton, Kroll, just so many guys. Dante Mephisto. I mean, just, man, I can keep going. Rick Reynolds, just so many. Hot Rod, everybody. And now we've had Gator McAlister, and I just thank you again. And like I said, we'll keep in touch. We'll have you on in a part 2 coming up in the next little bit, and we'll have some more fun. But for the always awesome Gator McAlister, my brother Jared, the Plastic Sheik, I'm Jimmy Street. We'll be right back to wrap things up with the Plastic Sheik on Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling.
Hey everyone, this is Shane from Insane Shane's World. I release wrestling figures of enhancement talent, mid-card wrestlers, and wrestlers that you never thought would have a figure available. So if you're interested in adding a really cool and rare figure to your collection, then don't hesitate to contact me at shamtheman73@gmail.com. That's SHAMtheman73@gmail.com. You can also join my Facebook group. Just search Insane Shane's World.
If you're a fan of rock and music, I'd really appreciate it if you took a moment to check out my podcast. It's called the Decibel Geek Podcast. We've been doing it for about 10 years now. We talk about Kiss. We talk about Ozzy. We talk about Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses and Metallica. We talk about all the legends from the 60s and on, up to brand new bands that you should be hearing about today that you're not going to hear on the radio. It's Decibel Geek. Wherever you find your podcasts, you'll find us there. If you love rock and roll, I can almost guarantee you're going to love my show.
This is The Big Picture, Michael Jablonski. Don't forget to tune in every week to Jablonski's Pissed Off on the Mike Jablonski's Pissed Off YouTube channel.
The wrong in this sport. He's gonna tell you all about it. He doesn't care what you think. You're gonna hear all about it. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. Mike Jablonski. He's so pissed off. He's pissed off.
Oh, Sheik right there. Another good one with Gator McAlister. Did I not tell you he was awesome, man? Super good dude.
Yeah, dude, that was, above my expectations. My expectations are always high, and they just always seem to be beaten by these stories we get from these people. And it's just so awesome, getting that pearl about, his time in WCW some,
That's what I was just about to say, man. Yeah, go ahead.
We didn't really know that we were getting that, and it pops up, and we come with a kind of seat of our pants type question, and it's a great story. I mean, we're always, we loved all wrestling as a kid, and Smoky Mountain's really close to us, and WWF, we loved it. But, deep down, I always felt like I was a WCW, NWA kid. So it's kind of,
for sure. Yeah.
It's always good when you get stuff like that, man.
Well, and I realized after the episode why it never showed up in my research is because I was searching Gator McAlister and they were calling him Gary McAlister. It's as plain as day. If you go search anything with Gary McAlister from WCW, that is Gator. Look it up. There's a Hacksaw Jim Duggan match, all kinds of matches. Honestly, if you just type in the wrestler and McAlister, it'll probably get you the match to pull up. But, anyway, that's why I didn't have any WCW stuff. And then when he was talking at the very beginning, kind of in the introduction there, you know, he said WCW, and I was like, okay, well, you know, we got to pivot here. We got to bring that up because that'll be too good to miss, you know. So, yeah, for sure. But I was going to say that exact thing, that I think that WCW stuff was some of my favorite. You know, I did enjoy the earlier parts when he was talking about Smoky Mountain and Tom Burton, and unfortunately those injuries with him and Tracy and Tom. And, yeah, man, I hate that he went through that, but obviously that's part of the risk of being a pro wrestler. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed that episode as well. Yeah. Gator's a good dude, and I feel like we definitely represented that. But, you know, I've kind of got a feeling for next episode. What do you think? Man, I don't know. We might need to bring the Plastic Sheik out a little bit. You think we should invite the Plastic Sheik on? I think so, and maybe a special guest or something. I don't know. Yeah. So dotting T's and crossing I's, we're going to have Insane Shane on the next episode. And Insane Shane is awesome. He's a big-time collector of action figures. He actually has his own line of action figures. You've heard his commercial on our episodes many times now. But the cool part about it is we're going to have him on to talk WCW Galoob action figures. It's going to be a whole episode of that. We'll also talk to Shane about his figures coming out. I figured this will be a good one for you, Sheik. Yeah, man, I'm excited about it. And anytime I can talk about figures, I love it. You know, our brother from another father and mother, Mason, our cousin, has got me itching buying stuff on eBay again. So I blame him. I blame him for this. So yeah. Well, hey. Yeah, I'm excited to talk to Shane and learn all about his, you know, some of his processes and everything like that, and then just his history with figures and everything like that, man. Yeah, for sure. It'll be fun, and it'll be just fun to kind of, you know, take a rest stop from the normal interview and talk a little specific topics or something for a minute. And then, you know, we'll be right back on the interview train. Don't worry, don't fret. We got new guests coming up all the time, we promise. But, you know, one thing I hope y'all noticed is that in the very middle of the episode, we did welcome a new advertiser to the show in Mr. Monte Carlo and the WMF Medium Rare YouTube channel. Monty's decided to come on to promote his upcoming debut of the final year of WMF Medium Rare, and it's going to be awesome. Check it out September 1st. Just go to YouTube, go to WMF Medium Rare. We promise it's going to be entertaining, and I promise you this, it will show the area and the guys that we've talked to, like Hot Rod Biggs, Quentin Charisma. It's going to be fun. It was a cult classic in Nashville. It was very popular with those folks. So anyway, we want to welcome WMF Medium Rare on as an advertiser. So thank y'all so much for that. Again, if y'all want to come on as an advertiser, we do have different rates available for you. Advertising is something we're looking for. So just let us know on that if you're interested, or you or your business would like to come on the show with us. So yeah, Sheik, I don't have much else, man. I'm excited about next week. I think Gator, do you have anything you'd like to say before we go? No, man, I just appreciate Gator and his time, and it was great to hear stories from him about all the different places he's worked and the people he's worked, man. It's just great to hear that stuff. Yeah, I agree. Gator's the man. Thank you, Gator. And so for Gator McAlister and for the Plastic Sheik Jared Street, I'm Jimmy Street, and we're Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling. We'll see y'all next week. Don't forget, don't go wrestling Gators.
With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life.
This has been a James Rock Street production.